Apple reached its multi-trillion-dollar valuation by mastering a very specific type of architecture. They used identity as the entry point, and then turned that identity into an absolutely inescapable lock-in empire. But that empire is currently facing a structural failure. Right now, in real time, that seemingly invincible wall is cracking. In a matter of months, Apple abandoned their proprietary Lightning charger, opened their fiercely guarded messaging platform to Android, and lost their monopoly on seamless wireless file sharing. These surrenders are happening because Apple is hitting the inevitable final stage of a closed system. No matter how high you built the walls, the garden eventually breaks. Apple's crumbling lock-in provides a rare look at the mechanics of a collapse. It shows you exactly how to spot the invisible walls that have been quietly closing in on your own life. Every lock-in is governed by a mathematical equation. A closed ecosystem survives as long as trapping users generates more revenue than it costs to defend. Over time, regulators investigate, competitors innovate. The cost of keeping people trapped rises year after year until the scale violently flips. The Lightning cable is the clearest example of this math at work. For over a decade, those 8 gold pins were a billion-dollar monopoly. Every third-party charger and accessory had to pay Apple for the privilege of existing. Apple defended this proprietary cord for years, even as the rest of the planet moved to a universal standard. They only stopped when the European Union passed a law that made defending the wall more expensive than simply tearing it down. Once the law passed in Europe, Apple switched to USB-C worldwide. They didn't do it for the customer. They did it because maintaining 2 separate systems was a logistical nightmare. The very moment the math stopped working in one region, the entire global proprietary system became a liability. iMessage worked on a different kind of friction. By intentionally stripping features from messages sent to Android users, Apple created a social penalty for leaving. The green bubble became a tool for tribalism, pressuring people to stay in the ecosystem just to keep the group chat functional. Google spent years campaigning for Apple to adopt RCS, a standard that would bridge that gap. Apple refused because the social exclusion was a primary driver of iPhone sales among younger users. But by 2024, the pressure from global regulators and mounting public resentment turned that exclusive feature into a legal target. Apple saw the writing on the wall and finally enabled RCS. Even the magic of AirDrop, the seamless file sharing that once felt like a miracle of Apple engineering, has lost its edge. Google and Microsoft built unified sharing systems that now provide that same convenience across almost every other device on the market. The exclusive advantage of the wall simply evaporated. Apple is still a massive company, but the friction required to keep people from leaving is becoming too expensive to maintain. This economic gravity applies to individuals as much as it does to corporations. The math of maintaining a trap, an ecosystem, or a lifestyle eventually hits a breaking point. Personal lock-ins function exactly like proprietary hardware. The golden handcuffs of a high-paying job you hate, the entanglement of a toxic relationship, or the recurring payments on a debt that dictates your career path. We drift into these situations because they offer comfort or convenience at first. But slowly, lifestyle creep and rigid habits turn conveniences into invisible walls that make leaving impossible. Just like Apple, you will eventually face rising costs to keep those walls standing. The stress compounds, the resentment grows, and the structure eventually cracks under its own weight. The question is whether you wait for the collapse to happen by force, through a crisis or a breakdown, or choose to dismantle the barrier while you still have the agency to do it. An architect audits their current life to see the walls clearly. Look at your financial commitments, your career, and your social circles. Ask, is this structure protecting my future? Or is it making me too expensive to move? Tech news is the surface distraction. The real play is noticing the mechanics of the trap. Identify one wall you're living inside of in the comments. Making the structure visible is the first step toward walking away from it.